The dog got sick first. That's what I keep coming back to, even now, sitting in this coffee shop in a city where no one knows my name. Biscuit. My ridiculous floppy-eared beagle who used to steal socks and sleep across my feet. He got sick before I understood what was happening to me, and I think about that a lot. I think about how he couldn't tell me. I think about how I almost couldn't tell myself. But I'm getting ahead of things. My husband and I had been married for 4 years when the Sunday dinners started. It was his idea. The way most things were his idea, presented so warmly, so reasonably, that I never thought to question it. His sister lived 20 minutes away. His parents were retired, healthy, with a big house and nothing much to fill it. Why not gather every Sunday? Why not be the kind of family that actually shows up for each other? I said yes because I loved him, because I wanted to belong somewhere, because I was 29 years old and I had moved to Columbus for his job, and my best friends were a group chat and a time zone away. His family was warm. His mother made pot roast that can make you forget your own name. His sister laughed too loudly at everything and I found it charming. His father told the same 3 stories every week and I had memorized the punchlines. For almost 2 years, those Sundays were the best part of my week. I want you to understand that before I tell you what they were. My husband's name is Garrett. I should say that plainly. Garrett Aldean, 34, who coaches youth basketball on Thursday evenings and tips 20% at restaurants and still holds doors open for strangers. The man everyone likes immediately. The man I liked immediately at a work conference in Nashville, where he spilled coffee on my notebook and apologized so genuinely that I gave him my number before I'd finished cleaning up. We dated for 2 years. Got married at a venue outside Cincinnati, barn, string lights, my mother crying through the whole ceremony. I wore my grandmother's earrings. My dad walked me down the aisle and squeezed my hand at the end like he was passing me something precious. I was happy. I want to be clear about that too. For a long time, I was genuinely happy. The Sundays at his parents' house felt like the physical shape of that happiness. Every week, the same driveway, the same smell of something slow cooking, his mother coming out to the porch before we'd even parked. Her name is Judith. His father is Harold. His sister is Tamara. Her husband is called Pete. I'll use the names they gave me permission to use, which is none of them. I'll use the names I've decided they deserve. Every Sunday, I sat at that table and ate and laughed and helped clear the plates. And somewhere around month 3 of that first year, I started feeling a little off. Not sick. Not dramatically, miserably sick. Just off. A low-grade wrongness. Fatigue that sat in my chest rather than my legs. A fuzziness behind my eyes by the time we drove home. I mentioned it to Garrett once, pulling out of his parents' driveway on a dark November evening. He reached over and touched my knee and said I was probably just tired, working too hard. He said it so gently that I believed him. The next Sunday, I felt it again. And the Sunday after that. By spring of that first year of dinners, it had become a pattern I was explaining away in new and creative ways. Dehydration. Stress at work. I'm a paralegal, the caseload had been heavy. Hormones, maybe. I was 30. Wasn't that when things started to shift? My OB ran a thyroid panel. Everything came back normal. She suggested I reduce caffeine and try to sleep more consistently. I did both. I still felt wrong every Sunday evening. The thing is, I didn't feel wrong any other time. Monday through Saturday, I was fine. Better than fine. I was running 3 miles on the Greenway, cooking dinners, calling my mom on the drive home from work, laughing at things. I had energy. I felt like myself. It was only after Sundays that I didn't. I remember the exact moment I first registered that pattern. It was a Tuesday in April and I woke up feeling completely normal, genuinely good, the way you feel after a long sleep in a cool room. And I thought, I feel better. And then the next thought arrived, quiet and unbidden. I always feel better by Tuesday. I sat with that for a moment and then I got up and made coffee and didn't think about it again for 6 weeks. Biscuit got sick in June. He was 7 years old, healthy weight, up to date on everything. A dramatic dog, but not a fragile one. He started vomiting on a Monday morning and I took him to our vet, Dr. Okafor, who ran some panels and found elevated liver enzymes. Nothing catastrophic, she said, but unexplained. She asked about changes in his environment, new cleaning products, different food, anything he might have gotten into. I said no to everything. She sent me home with some supplements and told me to watch him. That same week, I mentioned the Sunday pattern to Garrett again. Not the word pattern, I didn't call it that. I said casually that I'd noticed I tended to feel run down after family dinners. He looked at me for a moment and then said, "You know my mom would be devastated if she thought you didn't want to come anymore." I blinked. "That's not what I said." "I'm just saying," he said. He said it quietly, pleasantly, the way he said most things. I dropped it. I went the next Sunday. I felt awful by Sunday night. Biscuit stayed home because Garrett's mother was allergic to dogs and he had never been allowed inside the house. He stayed in the yard when we visited in warmer months. In winter, he stayed home alone. It was late July when I connected those two things. Biscuit had been improving. The vet was cautiously pleased with his numbers, and I realized the last 3 times I'd felt worst on Sundays, Biscuit had been home, and the 2 Sundays I'd felt less terrible. The 4th of July, when we'd skipped dinner for a cookout with my college roommate, and a Sunday in May when Garrett's parents had been visiting his aunt in Dayton. Biscuit had been with me, both times. The dog wasn't getting into something. The dog was away from something, and so was I, on the days I felt fine. I want to tell you I acted immediately. I want to say I confronted someone, or called the police, or at minimum walked into that house the next Sunday with my eyes wide open. I didn't. I did what I think most people do when they arrive at a thought so large and so terrible that the mind simply refuses it. I found another explanation. Maybe it was something in the house, a mold issue, an air quality problem. I bought a small air quality monitor from Amazon and left it running in our bedroom for 2 weeks. The readings were fine. Maybe it was the specific foods. I started keeping a rough log, what I ate, what time, how I felt. The log didn't show any food correlation. I could eat everything on the table or nothing, and still feel wrong by 8 o'clock. I want to tell you I'm an intelligent person. I am. I catch things at work that attorneys miss. I notice inconsistencies. I'm good at documents and details and timelines. And I sat with this particular timeline for 3 months before I let myself say the word, even silently, in my own head. Poisoned. I said it to myself on a Wednesday morning in September, standing in the kitchen in my pajamas while Biscuit watched me from his bed. I said it out loud, quietly, to nobody, and then I sat down on the kitchen floor and Biscuit came over and put his head in my lap, and I just stayed there for a while. The question was not if anymore. It was how, and it was who. And underneath both of those was a third question I couldn't look at directly. Why? Because Garrett wasn't there for every Sunday dinner. Some months he missed 1 or 2 work trips. Saturday late games that ran long. But I went anyway because his family had become my family, or I had believed that they had. I went and ate pot roast and helped Judith with the dishes and felt wrong on the drive home. He was there most of the time. But not always. I thought about that a lot in September. I thought about Judith's kitchen and the way she always brought me a glass of water when I arrived, before I'd even asked. A tall glass with ice and a slice of lemon every week, placed in my hand at the door. "Here you go, sweetheart. You always look a little thirsty when you get here." I had always found it sweet. I need to tell you about the money before any of this makes sense. When Garrett and I got married, I had a small inheritance from my grandfather. Not life-changing money. $80,000, sitting in an account I'd moved into a joint investment account 2 years into our marriage because Garrett had suggested it and it seemed like the reasonable, trusting thing to do. We also had a joint checking account and a joint savings that held our emergency fund. What I did not know, not until September of the year I started keeping the log, was that we had a life insurance policy on me. I found out by accident. I was looking for a document in Garrett's home office, an old tax return I needed to send to my student loan servicer, and I found a folder I didn't recognize. Inside was a policy I had never seen. $250,000. My name is the insured. Garrett as the sole beneficiary. Policies like this aren't unusual. Married couples get them. I knew we had term life insurance. We had talked about it when we bought the house. But I had believed we each had a policy on the other. Equal something we'd set up together. Not this. I had never been shown this paperwork. I had never signed it. Or I hadn't signed it willingly, at least not knowing what it was. I sat in that office for 20 minutes with the folder in my hands. Then I put it back exactly where I found it and went to the kitchen and drank a full glass of water from the tap and told myself to think. I called my college roommate, Phoebe, from my car in the parking garage at work the next morning. Phoebe is sharp and suspicious and has watched every true crime documentary available on every platform, which meant that when I finished talking, she didn't say, "I'm sure there's an explanation." She said, "You need to not eat or drink anything in that house until you know what's in it." "I don't have proof," I said. "You don't need proof to protect yourself," she said. "You need proof to go to the police. Protecting yourself is free." She was right. I knew she was right. I just also knew that if I suddenly stopped eating or drinking at Sunday dinners, and there was an innocent explanation for everything, I would have to explain to my husband and his family why I had quietly decided they were poisoning me. Phoebe said, "That's a problem for after you're not dead." I went to the next Sunday dinner. I accepted the glass of water from Judith at the door. I held it for most of the evening. I sipped from it twice, small sips, mostly for appearances. I ate almost nothing, claiming a stomach thing, a week-old excuse I leaned on. I loaded my plate and moved food around and slipped a dinner roll into my jacket pocket when no one was watching, like a very stressed squirrel. I felt fine on Sunday night. I felt completely fine on Monday. A friend of a friend is an attorney, family law mostly, but she knew someone. She put me in touch with a private investigator named Roland, who worked out of a nondescript office in Dublin, Ohio, and who asked questions in a flat, calm voice that made me feel like my situation was not the strangest thing he'd heard that week. I hired Roland in October. I told Garrett I'd joined a Tuesday evening book club, which was not true, and used those evenings to meet with Roland and review what he found. It took him 3 weeks. Garrett was having an affair. I want to pause on that for a second. Not because it was the worst thing I learned, but because it was the first thing, and it hit like a physical impact. A woman named Helena, who worked in his company's finance department. They had been together, as best Roland could determine, for almost 14 months. 14 months. The Sunday dinners had been happening for almost 2 years. Roland had photographed them together. He had phone records, location data legally obtained through the process I won't bore you with, timestamps placing Garrett at her apartment on multiple occasions. The evidence was clinical and complete, and I sat in Roland's office looking at photographs of my husband and a woman I'd never heard of and felt something very calm settle over me. The kind of calm that isn't peace. The kind that's just the absence of any feeling large enough to name. "There's something else," Roland said. He had pulled Garrett's financial records as thoroughly as he legally could. There were transfers I hadn't known about, money moving from our joint investment account to a separate account I was not on. Not huge amounts at once. Steady, quiet amounts, over 18 months. A little over $60,000 total. My inheritance. Being moved out of my reach, slowly, quietly. "Is there anything else you want me to look into?" Roland asked. I told him about the Sundays, about the water glass, about Biscuit. He didn't blink. He wrote it down. Roland connected me with a toxicologist, not to test me. I hadn't kept any of the water, but to understand what would be consistent with what I was describing. The symptoms, the pattern, the recovery time. She named several compounds. One in particular she kept returning to, a sedative compound that, in small repeated doses, would cause the kind of fatigue and cognitive fog I was describing, would metabolize fully within 48 hours, would be very difficult to detect without active testing, and would, over time, cause liver stress in animals significantly smaller than humans. Biscuit's elevated liver enzymes. He'd been in the yard during dinner. He drank from the outdoor bowl I always filled before we arrived. Judith knew about the bowl. She had offered to fill it herself once, early on. I had said no, it was fine, I'd do it. but the yard was accessible. The bowl was accessible, and whatever had been in my glass had made it into the yard somehow, during the months when Biscuit had access to the grass, the planters, the outdoor space. I'm not going to speculate about exactly how. The point is that I stopped filling the outdoor bowl. Biscuit's liver numbers returned to normal within 2 months. I want to tell you about the Sunday I understood all of it. It was November. Cold, dark by 5 o'clock. I drove to the family dinner alone. Garrett was coming from a basketball thing, would meet me there. I arrived, and Judith came to the porch and handed me my glass of water, same as always, and I thanked her the way I always did and walked into the house. I went to the bathroom. I poured the water down the sink. I rinsed the glass. I filled it from the tap in the bathroom, which is not the kitchen. I carried it back out. Then I watched. Judith's face when I walked back into the kitchen with a full glass. I watched her eyes go to the glass, then to me, then away. It was a small thing, the kind of thing you'd only catch if you were already looking. But I was looking. I stayed for dinner. I ate from the pot on the stove that everyone ate from. I drank only from what I'd poured myself or poured in front of others. I felt nothing that evening. I drove home clear-headed, the way you feel when you finally admitted something to yourself that your body already knew. I didn't confront anyone. Not that night. Here's what I had in November, working with Roland and the toxicologist in Phoebe on the phone every other night. Financial records showing $60,000 moved out of joint accounts. A life insurance policy I had never agreed to. Evidence of an ongoing affair. A documented pattern of illness that correlated specifically with consuming beverages prepared for me in one location. An animal who had shown unexplained liver toxicity consistent with low-dose sedative exposure and who had recovered when removed from that environment. Roland said I had enough to go to a detective. He said I had enough that they would listen. I called my sister-in-law, not Garrett's sister, my own sister Bethany, who lives in Portland and who had been quietly worried about me for months without knowing why. I called her and told her everything, start to finish, for 2 hours. She cried. I didn't. I had run out of crying somewhere around October. She asked if I was safe. I said I thought so, as long as I didn't eat or drink anything in that house, and as long as no one knew what I knew. She asked if I was sure no one knew. I said I was pretty sure. I went to the Columbus Police Department on a Thursday morning in late November with Roland beside me and a folder of documentation he had organized and a voice recorder in my jacket pocket, not because I planned to record anything that morning but because I had started carrying it everywhere. The detective we met with was a woman, mid-40s, tired looking in the specific way of someone who has seen a great deal but chosen to stay anyway. Her name was Reyes. She listened without interrupting. She asked 2 questions when I finished. Then she said she'd need to verify some of what I'd brought, and that I should not change my behavior at Sunday dinners yet, and that I should call her if anything changed. I walked out into a gray November morning and sat in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive. What happened over the following 6 weeks is something I lived through but will summarize, because the details belong to the case and some of them I'm still not allowed to discuss freely. The police tested a sample collected through means I was not involved in, from the Aldine family home. The compound the toxicologist had named was present. Garrett was brought in for questioning on a Thursday. He lawyered up within 4 minutes, which Detective Reyes later told me suggested preparation, not panic. Judith was questioned separately. What came out in the investigation, and what was later detailed in charging documents that are a matter of public record, was this: Garrett and his mother had been administering a sedative compound to me through my weekly water glass for approximately 19 months. The goal, as best as investigators were able to establish, was to create a documented pattern of unexplained health decline that could eventually be attributed to a condition, something progressive, something that would kill slowly. The life insurance policy had been taken out 20 months before I found it. The compound, used carefully, would have been almost impossible to trace without deliberate testing. Helena, the woman in the finance department, had been a planned exit. She had not known about any of this. She has since cooperated fully with investigators. I feel something complicated about Helena that I haven't fully sorted out yet. I think I probably will feel complicated about her for a long time. The money Garrett had moved was partially accessible. Some of it was recovered. The inheritance is a long and ongoing legal conversation that I won't pretend to have resolved. Garrett was charged with aggravated assault, attempted felony murder, and financial exploitation. Judith was charged with aggravated assault and conspiracy. Their attorneys are working. The process is slow in ways that would shock people who have never been in it. I have an attorney. Detective Reyes calls me when there's something I need to know. I have a victim advocate whose name is Paula and who sends me emails in a tone that is careful and warm and practical, and who I will be grateful to for the rest of my life. I am no longer in Columbus. I won't say where I am. The apartment I'm in now is on the 3rd floor, which I chose deliberately, and has a balcony that gets afternoon light and a kitchen where every single thing in the refrigerator belongs to me and got there in ways I watched happen. I have a coffee shop I like, 2 blocks north, where no one knows my story, and the barista learned my order after my 4th visit. And that small thing made me cry on the walk home. Ugly crying. The first real cry since October. Biscuit is here. He's healthy. He steals socks. I am 32 years old, and I am, in the plainest sense, starting over. I want to say something to anyone who is reading this and recognizing something. The thing about being harmed slowly and quietly by someone inside your own life is that the questioning happens in you first. Before you question them, you question yourself, your body, your perception, your feelings, your reasonableness. The self-doubt is part of the mechanism. It keeps you in place. It keeps you explaining yourself to yourself with stories that protect everyone but you. I was not dramatic. I was not paranoid. I was not tired or stressed or hormonally imbalanced. I was being poisoned at Sunday dinners by my husband and his mother for a life insurance payout, and for 19 months I found gentler explanations because the true one was too large to hold. Your body knows. That's what I want to say. Your body keeps the score, even when your mind is busy filing everything under exhaustion and overwork and probably nothing. Pay attention to patterns. Pay attention to what gets better when you're away from something. Pay attention to the dog. I don't know what comes next for me in any long-term sense. The legal process will take as long as it takes. I have a job I do remotely now. Clients who don't know my last name changed. I have Bethany, who texts me every morning just to check in. Nothing heavy. I have Phoebe, who sends me documentary recommendations and has never once said I told you so, which is an act of love I understand more deeply every day. I have a glass of water on the table beside me right now. I poured it myself, from a fill-to pitcher I bought in a kitchen where I know exactly what happened to everything. That sounds like a small thing. It isn't. It is, right now, everything. The caseload is still heavy at work. I still run when the weather cooperates. I still call my mom on the drive home. Last week she asked if I was doing okay, really okay, and I sat with the question for a moment, the way I used to sit with the wrongness on Sunday nights. Carefully, honestly, trying not to explain it away. I told her I think so. I told her I'm getting there. She said, "You sound like yourself." I do. Slowly, more every week, I sound like myself. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened, not in any grand cosmic way. I'm not someone who believes the universe was sending me signs or that everything happens for a reason. I believe in something quieter and more reliable than that. I believe that what people do, consistently and in secret, eventually leaves a mark somewhere. On the people they do it to, on themselves. On the record. Garrett believed he was being careful. Judith believed the same. 19 months of Sunday dinners, 19 months of a water glass handed to me at the door, and they had built what must have felt, from the inside, like an airtight system. I kept showing up. I kept drinking. I kept explaining myself to myself with gentler stories. From where they were standing, it was probably working. But Biscuit got sick, and I noticed I felt better on Tuesdays. And I am, it turns out, a person who pays attention to documents. None of those things were accidents. The pattern I noticed wasn't luck. It was what happens when you refuse, even quietly and half-heartedly, to stop trusting your own body. I almost didn't follow through on it. I almost let the self-doubt win, the way it does when the person causing the harm is also the person closest to you. There is nothing more disorienting than that. Nothing that makes you question your own perception faster than having the source of your pain be someone you chose in front of everyone you love to build your life around. What I keep coming back to is this: I didn't act heroically. I didn't have a single brave moment where everything clicked and I strode forward with certainty. I acted incrementally, slowly, with a lot of fear and a lot of second guessing and a lot of late-night phone calls to Phoebe, where I talked myself into and out of the same conclusion 4 times. The intelligence wasn't a flash of insight. It was just persistence. It was just refusing to file the pattern under a comfortable explanation one more time. And I think that matters, because I know how easy it is to look at a story like mine from the outside and think, how did she not know sooner? I understand that question. I asked it about myself. But the real question isn't why it took me 19 months to act. The real question is how people like Garrett and Judith build systems that are specifically designed to make you doubt yourself first. The self-questioning isn't a failure of intelligence. It's the intended result. What breaks the system isn't a sudden burst of courage. It's small, stubborn acts of paying attention. Keeping a log. Noticing the dog. Pouring your own water. Calling the friend who doesn't soften things for you. Bethany texts me every morning now. Just a check-in, nothing heavy. Some days I read it before I get out of bed, and it feels like something solid to stand on before the day begins. I didn't have that before. I had moved to Columbus for Garrett's life, and his family had become my social world. And when you're inside that kind of controlled smallness, it's hard to see how small it is. I have more now. A wider life. A kitchen where everything arrived honestly. What happened to Garrett and Judith is proceeding through the legal system at the pace these things move. I won't pretend I feel nothing about the outcome. I feel something. I want what they did to be on record. I want the accounting to be real. Not for satisfaction, at least not only for that, but because the record matters. Because the truth of what happened to me and to Biscuit and to the years I spent explaining away something that was being done to me on purpose deserves to exist somewhere outside my own memory. I sound like myself now. That's what my mom said, and I think she was right, and I think it is the most important thing.